South China Morning Post, 19th of November 2022. The election in Nepal may mark a turning point in the region's delicate balance of US, Chinese, and Indian geopolitical interests. China supported Nepal's communist insurgency and overthrew the country's previous democratically elected administration. Do you want the Communist Party of Nepal to be ruled by and under Chinese control? Sunday's widely anticipated general election in the landlocked Himalayan nation of Nepal will likely influence how Kathmandu manages relations with the US, China, and India, according to analysts. The 165 seats in Nepal's parliament and the 550 seats in its provincial assembly that are up for election will allow more than 17.9 million people in the South Asian nation, sandwiched between China and India, to choose a new government and prime minister. The surveys are being conducted as Kathmandu's importance in local politics grows. Washington has recently attempted to increase its presence in Nepal, where China and India have long competed for influence. Li Qian, China's Vice Minister for Culture and Tourism, made an extraordinary trip to Kathmandu earlier this month despite earlier suggestions that it be postponed due to the election. This visit indicates how precarious Kathmandu's foreign policy situation is. Location is a big factor in this. Nepal is strategically significant for Beijing because of its border with Tibet, which analysts claim Beijing views as a bridge to the South Asian region and another front in its conflict with India, which Beijing seeks to dominate, control. For its part, Delhi has always had strong connections with the nearby Hindu-majority nation of Nepal, which it views as a buffer between India and China. The open border policy between India and Nepal allows for the recruitment of Nepalese individuals into the Indian Army's Gorkha battalions. Analysts claim that Washington's interest in luring Kathmandu away from Beijing peaked when relations between China and India and China and the US crashed. According to Suresh Shalais, a former Nepalese ambassador to the United States and the United Kingdom, the election outcomes may significantly impact Kathmandu's ties with all three major world powers in the future. At the regional level and beyond, there has been a political shift, Shalais claimed. As a result, Nepal's relations with them are directly impacted by the connection between India, China, and the US. Therefore, he continued, Nepal's challenge would be to keep up excellent relations with all three amidst this upheaval. After significant Chinese interference, going from being pro-China to being pro-India, many people should be worried about the election outcome, especially in Delhi and Washington. Two communist factions joined forces with 5 other parties to run in the 2017 general election, which was the first held in Nepal under the new constitution. The Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninist, also known as the UML, and the Communist Party of Nepal, Maoist Center, or CPNMC, were widely believed to have been united by Beijing. In the end, the leftist coalition triumphed. KP Sharma Oli, the head of the UML who had previously been dubbed a pro-China leader by the Chinese state-run tabloid Global Times in 2015, was elected as Nepal's prime minister for a second term. Many people in Delhi were alarmed by Oli's rise because his election campaign was based on inflaming animosity toward India following its unofficial blockade of transporting crucial supplies to Nepal in 2015 due to the country's new constitution. Additionally, he frequently exploited the pandemic to criticize India, referring to the coronavirus as an Indian virus and making fun of the China-sponsored Indian state symbol meant to incite animosity between the two nations. On the other hand, Oli sought deeper connections with Beijing while in power. To give Kathmandu access to Chinese land and seaports and remove its sole reliance on India for trade, he inked the Transit and Transportation Agreement in 2016, during his first term. Many interpreted Nepal's 2017 participation in Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative as a hint that the landlocked nation was looking for alternatives to India for trade and logistics. To strengthen bilateral relations, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Kathmandu a year after Oli visited China in 2018. Several agreements were reached between the two nations, and Xi committed $493 million in help. While Oli was in charge, Kathmandu managed to keep Washington at bay. Although Nepal joined the Millennium Challenge Corporation, MCC, which qualified it for a $500 million grant for development, Oli's administration declined to press for its ratification in parliament. Beijing criticized Shirbahadur Deoba's ratification of the MCC in February of this year as evidence of the U.S. coercive diplomacy after Oli was ousted as prime minister in 2021 following a vote of no confidence in him. Deoba is the president of the Nepali Congress. In sharp contrast to Oli, Deoba has attempted to strengthen connections with the US and India. The Global Times has referred to Deoba as a pro-India leader. A swarm of high-profile U.S. legislators and officials recently visited Kathmandu to strengthen bilateral ties. Deoba, the first Prime Minister of Nepal to do so in more than 20 years, was scheduled to travel to the U.S. in July. However, the visit was cancelled, purportedly because of schedule conflicts. Nationalist opposition to the Chinese occupation of Nepali territories and land conflicts. The election takes place as Nepalese politics are in a very chaotic state. Since then, the two communist factions have broken apart and are at war. According to a Kathmandu-based political analyst who wished to remain unnamed, the CPNMC, currently led by Pushpakamal Dahal Prakhanda, and the Nepali Congress, the current ruling party, led by Deoba, have united and are anticipated to be ahead in the race. According to the analyst, on paper, the Nepali Congress and the CPNMC are a formidable coalition since the Nepali Congress is likely to hang on to its support while the CPNMC will split the communist vote and attack Oli's base. Observers anticipate that the incoming administration, should Deoba and Prakhanda prevail, will continue fostering connections with Delhi and Washington while preserving positive relations with Beijing. According to Sangeeta Taplial, a professor at the Jawaharlal Nehru University's Center for Inter-Asian Studies, the altered political landscape and the potential for the Deoba-Prakhanda pair to prevail, which is viewed as a more moderate coalition, could calm tense emotions in Delhi and Washington. This time, New Delhi is less likely to be worried, Taplial added. There wasn't a new leftist alliance supported by the Chinese in 2017, as opposed to this time. However, commentators have drawn attention to the unease Oli's campaign and conflicting messages have caused. In 2020, when Kathmandu issued a new map claiming the contested area in retaliation to Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh opening a new road inside the disputed territory, the historic, unresolved land dispute between Nepal and India erupted. He decided to launch his campaign from Darchula, a border town adjacent to the area. During his election campaign in early November, Oli brought up the issue and promised that his administration would take back all encroached land. In a matter of nationality, we will not cede even an inch of our territory to others. A map from the legislature has already been released, he said. Despite this, Oli reiterated that Nepal would continue to be neutral and non-aligned. We would be a trustworthy friend and neighbor of both China and India. He added that his country's foreign policy would be based on respect and mutual benefits. According to Santosh Sharma Patel, head of the Center for Strategic Affairs at the Nepal Institute for Policy Research think tank in Kathmandu, Oli's campaign is still a manifestation of his nationalistic stance against India, which has so far refrained from commenting on the rhetoric in favor of sending more than 200 vehicles to Nepal as logistical support for the elections. According to Patel, certain Nepalese political groups rely their claims of nationalism on what they can say about India. Oli's UML is trying to create the impression that Oli is the lone leader standing up to India in support of Nepal's territorial integrity and interests. Not to be outdone, Deuba stated that the new maps were approved by all parties in the Nepalese parliament, including his own. At the same time, Prakonda, a Deuba ally, claimed credit for the maps, claiming that the decision was made at his direction. Analysts claim that the pair have avoided offending Delhi in their campaigns and the manifestos published by their parties. Taplial stated, "The Nepali Congress has taken a very balanced view of Nepal-India ties, where they have addressed the land conflict but have not attached any adjectives to it." She noted that Prakonda's party had mellowed down its rhetoric regarding India. Conflicting priorities due to Chinese intervention. 3 divergent agendas regarding Nepal. Washington, Beijing, and Delhi will have been perplexed by all these contradictory signals from the campaign road. To strengthen ties with Kathmandu and broaden their influence, observers say the US and India must focus on containing growing Chinese influence in Nepal and the surrounding area. About the BAN, a coalition of Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal focusing on enhancing connectivity and sharing resources, including water, power, transportation, and infrastructure. Taplial predicted that India would strengthen the economic linkages between the countries. India and Nepal are connected by land, which may be advantageous to both nations. India may assist Nepal with its desire for economic and social security, according to Taplial. In exchange, Kathmandu must work more closely with New Delhi to address its security concerns. Former Nepalese diplomat Shilais stated that given Nepal's continued support for the One China policy, the US would be quite keen to examine if Kathmandu can be persuaded to be independent and not back the policy. He continued that the outcome of the MCC funding would also significantly impact how Kathmandu dealt with Washington. According to Shilais, the MCC is the litmus test for the US. The grant's execution, or lack thereof, will indicate to the US how Nepal views the relationship. Analysts forecast that Beijing will continue to expand its influence in the region, with Chinese policy being shaped by various interests, not the least of which are economic ones. China's gateway to South Asia in Nepal. China could readily trade with and through other South Asian nations like Bangladesh via Nepal if it could create the right conditions, according to Shilais. Because it borders the delicate Tibetan region, Nepal is also significant to Beijing. Before, Tibetans escaping Tibet would seek refuge in Nepal, but this has gradually changed. Due to pressure from China, Tibetan refugees are now frequently the target of repression in Nepal. Therefore, the former ambassador continued, Beijing may see it essential to have the government of its choice. According to Shilais, China feels that a weak and unstable administration will not be able to serve Chinese interests in the region.